we're not the French who just think consonants are a suggestion.
Yeah. It's interesting when you go to Dunkin' Donuts and you buy a toasted bagel with
Cream
butter,
cheese?
butter
Butter?
with a double D,
Butter.
but in fact,
What do you say? Are you going full enunciation queen on butter? You say butter?
like if you go to Dunkin' Donuts and ask for butter, they
You
laugh
sound like
at
a
you.
Brit. Yeah, yeah, but no one says butter. It's butter. It's one syllable. Butter.
So you just Tuesday is Tuesday? Just
No, it's context.
whatever,
It
you know,
depends on the
like
word.
screw it. Like all the rules go out the window.
There aren't, I mean, it's English. There are no rules.
I mean, it
You
was the
all invented
rules.
extra rules. No. You all invented extra rules in the 1700s. You all got sick and tired of sounding like the commoners who sounded, as far as we can tell, like Appalachians. And you all, no, genuinely, if you try to, the best place to hear Shakespeare is Kentucky, because the Kentucky accent is Eastern Kentucky, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachian accent is the closest thing, we're pretty sure, to what it sounded like in the 1500s. So it's in the 1700s that you all got sick and tired of sounding like the commoners and invented a new accent. It's called the received pronunciation. The British aristocracy was like, well, we've colonized the world. We're kind of bored. What else should we do? I know. We'll start saying extra weird. That's why the London accent is so weird.
We did so much stuff. I can't believe you reduced it down to we got bored. We were tired.
Explain why you were tired.
We
It
were
was so
tired.
difficult enslaving the world and ruining things through colonialism that you decided that the thing you needed to do was sound different.
we were
Literally, the
trying
upper
to-
class was like, let's start saying words differently on a whim. It's weird.
Hang on, we were tired because we were basically managing 160 countries. You guys are having a hard time doing one.
Right.
So-
You guys didn't do 159 of them very well.
It was,
Yeah.
it was still busy work.
Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. We're also here to get deeper in the human element. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems. And I can't think of two better people to do that than Kevin and I.
Which is why we really need to get some more guests booked on here. If you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is My Brother, and Me. Also tell your friends if you like the show and that they should check it out. Some of the best podcasts out there go by word of mouth, and we'd much appreciate it.
And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, for our segment User Stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with an engineering or product team member, trying to figure out how to solve an agile process problem, or you just can't understand why your favorite app updated everything and is now terrible, we're here to talk it through with you. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the User Stories channel, and we might be able to help on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking to a coworker or something.
On this week's show, we'll hopefully help some people out with some more Reddit questions. But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is a segment we like to call User Stories, where we'll eventually hopefully be answering questions that you, the listener, send in. But for now, I think we found some interesting questions on Reddit that we can tackle. All right, Sizat, saying no to wishes as a PM. How do you say no to everything that would stop you from doing what is more important than the wishes of your team for anything and everything? What would you suggest to do in order to improve or develop the skill of saying no? The first thing I do is make you rethink the structure of why you're saying no. You're not saying no to everything, and the decision of what is more important than the wishes of your team. I'm probably being a little bit pedantic here on the phrasing of what's probably a relatively junior PM person, but there's some fundamentals here that I want to reset.
Can you help me out first, or can you reword that first bullet, because I can't make heads or tails of what they're saying?
So this is a person who's saying, I'm hearing requests come in from other people, and I need to be able to say no to
Oh,
them because it's not more important than the wishes of my team.
gotcha.
And I need to be able to say no. And it's like, no, one, you don't need to say no all the time. It's a very important skill to know when to say no. And I think that's part of what I'm the reason I called this one out is there is a balancing act of hearing from people and trying to figure out the value and importance of the feedback you're getting. And that is why a lot of the times you've got to find a way to say, yes, I'm hearing what you're saying. This is good feedback, but I'm going to have to prioritize it against everything else that's going on. Let's talk about the impact, the value, the reason why this is a thing. And I think, again, I'm calling this out just as like product management 101, which I don't know how helpful it is to folks, but there's a thing here, which is relationship building, making people want to come to you with their problems. Saying no is not the way to accomplish that. And yet you do need to say, like it's this weird tricky balancing act you have in product, which is like, I'm not saying yes to you, but I want you to come to me every time you have a thing so I can figure out the overall impact, the overall scenarios that are happening. But then I do need to let you down gently and say that's not a thing that's going to happen tomorrow for you. But I don't know, it's this weird thing where you're saying no, but you're never actually saying the words no. And that is a tricky skill set. And it is not a black and white thing of like, how do you suggest I get better at saying no? I don't. I suggest you get better at listening to your stakeholders, understanding their problems, figuring out how to plug that into your overall prioritization, and helping them understand where they fit in that prioritization.
I feel the same way you do. But to give our listeners a bit of variety, I'll also relate it back to whenever I've been in charge of risk management or involved enough that I was a stakeholder, I've always argued that getting something into the system changes the mindset of the recipient, right? Like if I'm raising risk verbally in a meeting, they're like, why is this guy throwing me under a bus? Like, why are they going after us? If I put it in the risk management system, it's, well documented, it becomes a number on a report, right? Where it's like, yeah, okay. But notice 3 tickets for risk on my own team, right? Like I can depersonalize the entire thing.
Right.
And I don't know if this is how I would deal with it, but I imagine this is a way, which is, yeah, cool. I'm going to take all your requests and I'm going to put them in a place that is sorted by priority. So by the time we would get to these things, I don't know whether they're, it's true. I don't know whether they're priority enough that they'll actually make it to development and then production, but they're in the queue, so I kind of think about like how I might say no, because it's exactly what you said. You find another way of saying, well, we can't do that without saying the words, right? It's so true.
People just want to be heard. People want to feel like they were able to get their feedback in front of the right people and that you considered it and you listened to them and you asked them questions and you internalized what they're trying to tell you. And then it's okay at that point to say, okay, but here's why this giant customer that we already have and the 5 others who we're trying to sell to are more important than that right now. And I hate the word transparency because it's been buzzword bingoed to death, but that is the point of the transparency is you are not just receiving their information, you are in conversation with them to help them understand what you're doing with the information and where their idea or problem or request falls into things. And this is the job of a product person. This is why you want somebody dedicated to this, is because you have to go and figure out how to convey to people, I've heard the 5 things you've told me over the last month. None of them unfortunately have made it to the roadmap yet because of all of these other things. That's your job. You got to make sure that they appreciate that their input is going somewhere and influencing other things. I'll also say, if you never get around to their feedback, that's also not good. And sometimes that does happen, but be mindful of, I told you a thing 6 months ago and I haven't heard back about it again. That's also bad. You got to figure out what to do about that too. All right. Noble Space 14. Sprint velocity not matching project timelines. I'm part of a Salesforce project. Some of the developers are not familiar with Salesforce, so they are overestimating simplest of the stories so that they can explore as they go. They report to a separate IT manager, and the manager is prioritizing cross-training learning over project delivery timelines. As a result, product owners are pulling in a lot of weight on their behalf. Attempts to find a solution via meetings ends in ugly confrontations and finger-pointing. Needless to say, the team is also quite disengaged in refinements and retrospectives. What can be done to have the vision shifted back to project delivery and fix the team's morale. And I included this one because it sounds like you're a bad product owner. Sorry to be rude, Noble Space 14, but if you have a bunch of people who don't know how to write this code and work in Salesforce, you gotta give them the time to come up to speed and get comfortable with that. And they're not pushing back on you. Like, there are plenty of cases where engineers don't like the priority, they don't like the thing that they're working on, they don't like, there are conversations to have with engineering teams about morale and interest and how they push back on things. Doesn't sound like that's the situation here. This one sounds like you gotta recognize that you have some foundational things that need to happen first, and you all should have baked that into your project plan and your project timeline. And maybe the IT manager screwed up and didn't tell you that soon enough, but I don't know, this one, maybe there's other factors going on here. But yeah, man, if you what do you want to have happen? They don't know how a Salesforce feature works and they spend a bunch of time implementing it wrong. You're going to triple your timeline rather than just making it 1.5x longer. I don't know, like, this one, I just thought it was an interesting example of like just foundational communication failures here, and you all should have talked about things sooner and understood one another. Of course there's confrontations and finger pointing. None of you are talking.
Yeah, and the tough thing is, having been the challenge too here is like, and this is directly for Noble Space 14, are you part of the problem, right? Which is,
Right.
we want to go to Salesforce. Oh, the engineers are taking so long. Can we just do it ourselves? Is that the bit we're missing, where it's like, oh, you're
Yep.
actually trying to flip this and move all this to the business team because you think you can just build it in the workflows, and the engineers are saying it's going to take 3 days, but you think it should take 3 hours because you get water through the pipes. If
Yep.
it's that, then this is the genesis of the Salesforce problem for me, right? Is Noble Space 14, you are part of my problem with Salesforce. It's not actually Salesforce, it's people like, I'm not saying they are like that, I'm just saying, like, if they are,
Yeah, there's that sentence. As a result, product owners are pulling in a lot of weight on their behalf. What are you possibly doing as a product owner on behalf of the engineers in Salesforce? Yeah, it sounds like people are starting to go and say, well, you guys told me you couldn't do this thing, so I just went in and I created the screen for you. Like, no, 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 no. Yeah, I feel one of our many recurring themes on this podcast is, oh my God, just talk to one another better and understand better what's going on. And you can be annoyed but that the IT manager failed to tell you that there was a training issue, but why are you not just going back to the business and the project plan and whatever it is and saying, we got 6 weeks of training we need to do first. Sorry, there's a new timeline. Like, easy. Sorry, everyone's going to be upset about that, but I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one, which nobody's perfect, right? But there are still times I can sit in a meeting and I know it's not happening. And I know I should say something.
Right.
I know I should guide, derail, move, cancel, take offline, do one of 100 things to say. There's too many people either waste an hour or waste 30 minutes again, right? Like,
Right.
so even at times I can let my comms drop. But yeah, this feels like a couple of different places I've worked where I love that you called out that as a result, product owners are pulling in a lot of weight. I didn't really get where they were going with that, but if it means what you say, which is, oh, the product guys are actually stepping in and building workflows, that is
Right.
precisely the scenario I was talking about.
Yep.
Is it people think I'm just whiny and cynical and bring these things up? But I love it when somebody actually is kind of like, yeah, it actually is like that.
Exactly.
And it's funny too, though. I talk to the vendors about this stuff, and they know, right? They know that, like, some of them have. That's why they push the professional services engagements too, in a big way, right? It's like, which is a challenge because for companies, like, that's often like, oh yeah, of course they want to make more money. It's like, yeah, but how are you going to train 20 people to run this, and then how are you going to roll it out at the enterprise? Because I always say that, like, there's many an engineer that's had a really good idea and shown me and be like, this is amazing, but how are you going to take it to the enterprise? Like, how are you going to onboard 12 different engineering teams to using this? Like, have you thought about that? And then rightly so, they'll point out, well, I need a platform architecture help me, and it's like, yeah, but you got to go get those things. They're not gonna come to you tomorrow like, oh, we heard through the grapevine you built this really cool thing. You got to go run that project or program, and it's hard.
Well, and that's where you get into like the Office Space joke about the, product manager is the person who sits between the engineer and the user. And it's like, why can't the engineer just go talk to the user? And it's like, because you have a full-time job, and had you gone and talked to a partner in product or UX and sort of had someone say, okay, great, how are you going to roll this out? Have you thought about how a business user is going to use this in these 4 different scenarios of types of people that you have there? Like, all of those types of things, just talk to people. I don't understand these organizations where, like, I could not work at a place where I couldn't just go and reach out to somebody in another department and be like, I need help with this. Are you the person I could talk to about it? And sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is yes. And I don't know. So many fundamental things in the world are broken because people suck at talking to one another. I don't get it.
That's true. It really is. It's interesting because it's not like we're not going through a period of adjustment, are we? Like this is genuinely our species is missing a type of personality like our businesses need to run like lean,
Fully
maximize.
entire global catastrophes are because people suck at talking.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, I don't know how to pronounce this. Bizzadee? Bizzeehde. Bizza? Bizzadee? Stop designing your web application for millions of users when you don't even have 100. And so it's this article that talks about how people try to plan for scaling way too soon and they make all of the wrong choices because they're so focused on scale early on and they're not focused on actual user value, client value, getting actual functional features out the door. They're spending a bunch of time on people tend to we've worked in situations, I've been in situations where I've wanted to say, well, we should figure out how we're going to do the most scalable database connection pooling capability first so we can make sure that we're prepared for the future. Like there is a version of that. He has this whole article, I'll link it in the show notes, trying to tell people to stop doing that. And I don't know, there's parts that I agree with. So I called out some of the section headers here. You don't actually know what you need yet, so why are you trying to scale it? Over engineering can waste time. Yes, scaling early means unnecessary costs. Sometimes speed and flexibility are key, sure, and your future problems will be different, yes. But then he goes on to talk about like scaling is easier than you think when you need to do it later. And I'm like, no, no, it's not. What is that? That's not true at all. And user experience matters more than scale. Again, no. Ask anybody who just tried to watch. I don't even want to talk about the Mike Tyson, whichever stupid Paul brother beat him up this weekend on Netflix. But like, Netflix can't scale its live capabilities. It doesn't matter how slick the next Netflix UI was for those live events if it can't scale those kinds of things. And that's an extreme example. And by the way, Netflix just announced they're going to have Beyonce for the Christmas Day halftime special, and they're going to try to live stream that. Good luck to that poor Netflix streaming team. But no, user experience is not necessarily more important than scale if no one can access your app or your site because you're crashing under the volume you didn't plan for. So I don't know. This guy's trying to sort of have this whole thing talking about it's more important to build now and not for someday. And I'm like, there's there's parts of that are true, but I'm not fully on board. You should be contemplating scale, if not necessarily writing all of the code and making sure that you're not writing code that paints you into a corner. You've got a face.
Yeah, my problem with these ones is the type of engineer that it pulls out of the woodwork are what I imagine the tech bros are like, right? Where it's like, oh
Sure.
yeah, I was once arguing with a CTO at a company. It's like then you hear the story and you're like, yeah, but they're thinking about something strategically and you just want to get your code out, right? Like
Right.
yeah, I can almost sense I haven't read through the comments, but I can almost sense like it's that weird opening to yeah. Someone once told me about scaling. It's like yeah, it's a weird one because I mean, like people often think too, like oh, if you're thinking about scaling, it's slowing us down. It's like what are you talking about? Like it's actually like there's known patterns for doing that right here that we can use. That's fine. Like
Right.
yeah, it's a weird one. I think unless the person goes in a great detail too, I think it's a vague one where the scaling conversations can be too much, right? Too
Right.
early, wrong time, wrong way. But yeah, I just don't see I don't see the big deal here. I've never really been in 25 years. I've never been delayed because Manesh down the corridor was taking a long time in his architecture decision. I just don't get that
Right.
attitude, right? Like it's a weird one. Yeah, whiny.
Yeah, it's a little whiny. Well, and I don't know, there's a running theme I feel like, which is just everything in moderation, right? Just like everything in moderation.
That's
Just
that's why I said too sweet, too salt.
yeah,
It's exactly
exactly.
that
Like
thing. It's
just don't write your code in a way that can only run on your laptop because you're going to need to containerize it. So do a little bit of the work to get the container code working. But also, yes, no one's asking you to write the 4 weeks of Airflow orchestration code that you don't need yet. But do some of the things. I don't know. Yeah, it's this weird thing where I just think the answer a lot of the times is it's a little bit of both. And people who don't like those areas of gray, get out. What are you doing in this industry?
yeah, and that they also reduce it. They're very reductive. This is what bothers me, and I call you they because yeah, this is they reduce it down. There are two types of people in this world. It's like there's not. There's
No.
really not. It's
Right.
like I don't know where the quote came from, and I don't hate this quote, but like build for now, not for someday, right? To your point, like it depends on what type of scaling conversation, the type of software you're building. Again, like the astronaut doesn't want to hear me saying, no, no, don't worry. Next time
Right.
we go, you're gonna get that data in seconds instead of minutes because we're gonna scale it. Like, no, like there's just some industries where quality and again, like who knows what culture this person works in, but I always like the ones you always have a hard time when you're building an EA from scratch, right? Because the minute you walk in somewhere, everyone's like, oh, this person's here, slow me down, tell me what to do. That ain't happening. It's like, no, actually, I'm not. I'm actually here to learn probably more from you guys because I've always described it like, look, I'm like the guy who builds the map in Minecraft, but then you're going to go build the magic on top of that map, right? I'm just giving you
Right.
a map. You're the one who's going to go build a house that has tunnels and all these interconnected cool things, right? You're the one doing the magic. I'm just saying, like, here's your map, right? Don't fall off the edge. Don't build in the water. I made you a bridge. So I think also I can understand an engineer or whoever feeling this way if they're in one of those organizations where it is slow and you have to go in front of a council or committee. And
Right.
but yeah, I haven't experienced that where somebody was holding me up because of a design. Knucklehead. See,
All right. Loud Milk Bag.
that's a great name.
It's a good name.
Oh, hang on,
New
no,
comp.
hang on.
Oh,
It's
oh,
loud underscore milk bag.
sorry. Yes. Loud underscore milk bag. Milk bags, which are only in Canada. New company, and I'm starting to hate this team shit. Nobody seems genuine here. Everybody shows up chipper and energetic for work, and I just don't buy it. Kind of pisses me off, especially when I'm personally not waking up in the best mood every single day. I'm not interested in a yay team, go team, love my team workplace 24/7. It seems fake. I don't buy it, especially when you take a look around and no one has a connection beyond a professional service level. And I don't mean to sound like I'm anti-happy workplace, but these are clearly not my type of people, or they're much better at faking it than I am.
What a strange one.
So
Ooh.
I brought this one in because I do think I am not the right person. Like I'm simultaneously the person who I've had to like be the person giving I don't know how inspiring I was, but I had to give the fairly like rah rah, we're a startup, we're all trying to figure out these cool problems together, and like a thing I genuinely believed in. I was pretty passionate about some of these startups and wanted people to get excited about the cool stuff we were doing. So I've been the guy to try to find the like interesting thing, but I also recognize that does not work on me. I'm not the person who's going to like, I'm never going to be cheering for the CEO standing on stage in front of 1,000 people. Like I don't get that level of hype. My excitement expresses itself differently. And there are definitely situations where people are fake about this in a way that is weird and like brown nosing and trying to like kiss the boss's ass. I don't know. There are versions of this that are bad, but for the most part, I don't know. I think a lot of people try to find the joy in their work and the people that they like to work with and I mean, there's plenty of times when people are like, oh, happy Monday, and make a joke out of it or celebrate the fact that it's Friday Eve on Wednesday. Like, I don't know. There's versions of not truly chipper and fake personalities that are still trying to find the like way to keep I don't know. I think that there's versions of this that suck, but most of the time I think it's fine.
Yeah, and again, we have to sort of invent a little bit more detail, right? Sometimes, or base it on our previous experience. But actually, I'll take it to my worst experience of this, and I won't say it's a Boston thing, but it's definitely a Boston thing, right?
Sure.
You go to a startup and everybody's so happy, and you have those team meetings where they're rah 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 rah, and but actually then and I've always sort of coined it as being like culture is a poster on the wall, right? Like there's the rah-rah, but then when you actually go start working through your day-to-day, it's not rah-rah anymore, right? Like,
Right.
or worse, the rah-rah flows through to the day-to-day and like, no, you don't get it. There's an outage, right? Like we should not be playing foosball and laughing about it.
Right.
So I've been in places where the culture was too much for me. More recently, I think I was at a place where it's like, oh yeah, we don't I am at the leadership level, we don't I am one to one because we shouldn't be saying anything that can't be shared with the group. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard,
What?
right? Like it's dumb.
What?
It sounds great and it sounds new agey and all that, but it's just dumb because there's things I need to be able to say to you
Right.
legally that I'm not going to
Right.
say to the group. So I've seen this go like to places where I'm like, yeah, that's not, I can't work in that culture, right?
Right.
So I've seen that. So I'm gonna stick one out here for loud underscore milk bag and join hands and say, yeah, I'm making a leap to justify what they wrote.
Sure.
because I've seen it and it is annoying.
Sure. I just think they're kind of a crank and they should go work somewhere
That
else.
that was my initial reaction, but
Yep,
I've
that's
seen
fair.
I felt yeah, I felt those places where it's like, why are we celebrating? Why are we clapping this person for doing their job? Actually, it reminds me,
Sure.
there's a famous soccer player called Roy Keane, and he's loved now, he's retired, he's a pundit, and he's loved because he speaks honestly about things. And he often says, like, people will talk about goalkeepers and the saves they make, and he's very famously comes back to the point, he's like, that's your
That's their
job.
job.
That's your job,
Sure.
isn't it? Right? Like that's
Right.
you're paid to make a save, right? Oh yeah, and that just to connect that, it's like I've been places. I mean, it's more than one, maybe two or three of the medium, smaller companies where it's like, should we reward the engineers when they get their tickets up to date? I'm like,
Right.
you out of your mind?
That's
Not
what your
buying an
salary's
Amazon
for.
gift card for doing your job?
Right.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I will say in general, I also, so one of the reasons I called this out is that it seems fake. I don't buy it. And the thing I don't love that a lot of people, like all human beings do, and I wish people did less often, is don't assign motive unless you've actually heard the person tell you what their motive is for a thing. And it seems fake. I don't buy it is one of those things where I don't love when people infer what the reason is for something. I don't know.
So
I don't.
saying with Office Space, you don't like the mat.
Who's the? I
You
don't
don't
remember
like
that
it.
movie well enough.
You know the jump to conclusions, Matt.
I don't. I've seen that
Seriously?
movie like
The
I've seen
only
that movie
reason to
like
watch Office
once.
Space is for the quotes.
I know, but I don't remember this quote.
I'm not explaining it. You have to go watch it again now.
Okay, I'll go watch it
Um,
again.
yeah, I lost my train of thought now. But yeah, no. I agree. And like one of the best communication classes I ever attended was I think it was I want to say it was an Experian deal. So credit to
Hmm,
Experian. But if they started to talk about like, you know, Kevin said this and I find that insulting, right? Whereas the correct thing to do is say, Kevin said this and this is how it made me feel, right? Or
right,
you know, like you because I don't know if Kevin was really, you know, saying something
right,
mean, but I can tell you how it made me feel. I can't tell you that you tried to make me feel that way, but I can tell you how
exactly.
it made me feel. So yeah, I think humanity is better off for those changes. Not in our lifetime though.
I wish.
Yeah, we're not good at that.
No. POTICes? POTICES? This is the problem with doing Reddit. These usernames are wild.
No, it's pot ices.
Pot ices? Are you sure? Yeah, that's what
Yep,
you're gonna go with? Okay.
pot ices.
Pot ices. Shiny object syndrome. So talking about working at wasn't quite a startup, it sounded like a bit of a mid-sized company, and describing how they prioritize. We, the CEO plus sales, so not really we, talk to existing and potential customers and report back to the product team what the market is demanding. We agree about what to work on. I and our designer jump on a few calls with the customers to understand what their problem actually is and how to make a good solution. We scope, design, and build it. It turns out that the customers didn't have enough money or decided to go with something else or are not ready to change from their Excel spreadsheets or whatever the current process is. And in the meantime, the CEO talks to some other people and they want a different feature. I think this is a perfect example of shiny object syndrome. And the reason I highlighted this one is just the thing I bolded here was they didn't have enough money. And I think that is one of the things that I've seen product people fail to catch over and over again is you have really, and the problem is they're really fun conversations. You get to brainstorm with clients and users and talk about how cool it would be if we had this thing and then you didn't have to do this in the spreadsheet. You could come to our UI and you do this thing and then that and all of this fun brainstorming and whiteboarding and figuring out what this amazing cool feature is going to be, and then you forgot to make sure that they have budget to not do it manually. And it's just like it's one of those product 101 things that not enough people talk about of the product life cycle is actually making sure someone's willing to pay you for this thing. And it's especially hard in the internet where the internet is mostly free. And so figuring out what does that mean? How are you going to make money off of it? The rest of this question is also a problem. The CEO getting distracted by the next shiny thing. Yes, that's a problem. There's no solution to it in a startup. You can do a better job helping the CEO understand the trade-offs, understand the impact, but that is, I mean, I don't know, I shouldn't say that there's no solution to it. It's very hard when it's a founder-led company, getting a shiny object CEO not to go and do all of those kinds of things. Go to a slightly larger company is probably my best answer there, because convincing a lot of founder CEOs not to jump at the next thing that they think is going to get them money is a very hard thing that you shouldn't try to tackle on your own, depending on your seniority, I suppose. This person sounds like they're a mid-level product manager. But really, the reason I wanted to highlight this one is just like beat everyone over the head with, yeah, you got to make sure someone's going to pay you for this thing. And if they're not, you better have a model of advertising or something else to figure out how you bake it into the subscription cost or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Like, 'cause I was thinking about this a couple of posts ago, and I was wondering, like, the most naive, and I have worked with some naive individuals and teams, right? And I've been naive myself at times. But this is where I was thinking, like, the difference between engineers and product guys, and often you're like, oh, product guys, ooh. But how many engineering groups if I came in and told them to build something, no matter how insane it is, a lot of those teams would build it, right? Like a lot of teams would take no questions asked about the business and
Right.
just keep building. Right. And so I don't think most engineering teams that I've worked with have ever thought about is somebody going to buy this? Is somebody going to
Right.
pay for this? Other than when you were sort of insulting the product guy, like, is anybody going to
Right.
use that? Like,
But those are the best engineers to partner with, is the ones who, like, it can go too far and the engineer
yeah,
can be like, I'm going to start doing your job. And it's like, okay, well, you only have 40 hours in the week, so
right.
good luck with that. But yes, it's much better when your engineers are like, wait,
Yeah.
how? What?
And I think that's a culture thing too, right? Because I think I feel comfortable now at my level that I can go in, and I normally do it as a series of questions, right? Like, well, if we built that, then this would be a precursor for this, and then the customers could do that. And if you guys
Right.
wanted to, your product, you guys decide, but we could have this marketplace where we sell blah blah blah, and then I'm done then, right? Like I'm assuming like that energized product guy is going to be like, it's either a good idea or bad idea, but at least I got a vantage point. I can go research and then come back and be like, hey, you were right or you were wrong, or the margin's not that great.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of people who have removed that from those conversations or that way of thinking. But I agree, the best people, because it can be on the product side too, like have that, a little bit of DNA. They're mutts, right? They've got some of the DNA of the other.
Right. Well, and it's not an easy skill. One, that's an awkward, hard question to ask a prospect or a client. So figuring out how to actually figure out if you're willing to pay for it. Is it an upgrade cost? Is it a module add-on? Is it a margin impact because it's more cost for us, but we're not changing the subscription fee? Like there's a bunch of hard stuff. There's math, there's finance, there's difficult conversations with clients and prospects. It's not an easy thing. It's easy to say, don't forget to make sure that this is something that's going to get paid for. That's a hard skill to build up.
It is. We were just born that way, though. It's hard for us, right? Because when you're just born that way.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Yeah, that was actually somebody else's quote, but I won't.
Somebody
name,
else
I won't name them
would-
in case you accidentally don't cut it. Because I.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com. You can also follow us on most apps. We're at AcceptancePod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog over there. We're also building a community on Reddit at r/acceptancecriteria and on Discord. You can find links to both in the show notes and on the blog, and I promise we'll be moderating the crap out of them to keep it a nice little slice of the internet. For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at kthomaseuland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER, and this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you.